Welcome to MuggleCast, your weekly ride into the Wizarding World fandom. I'm Andrew.
I'm Eric.
I'm Micah.
And I'm Laura.
And this week, come join us as we analyze Order of the Phoenix Chapter 4, Number 12, Grimmauld Place. But be sure to tiptoe down the hall quietly because we don't want to wake up while Berga Black. I don't know if I've ever pronounced her name out loud before. Walburga, did I get that right?
Yeah, that's how I would say it. To be honest with you, I forgot that was her name until I Googled her. So here we go.
Gotta say, Walburga.
That's what I was thinking. It sounds like Wahlburgers. Now I'm going to go get a Wahlburger after the show.
You know, when you're in college and you're studying all day, and then you and your friends go out at night for a Wahlburger.
Wahlburger.
And
I've never had a Wahlburger.
Yeah.
What do you think her nickname was? Like
Wally.
Molly had Wally Wobbles.
Well, Wally Wobbles then.
Wally
Wobbles.
I like Wally.
I think Mr. Black, dearly departed Mr. Black, probably called her Wally Wobbles.
Well, before we get started with chapter by chapter, we have some actually pretty exciting news. We now have an official merch store available at MuggleCastMerch.com. This is the new home of all MuggleCast merchandise, all original MuggleCast merchandise. This is stuff we haven't released to patrons either. This is all brand new stuff. We have t-shirts, sweaters, hoodies, hats, and we will be rolling out more in the months ahead. We even have security nightmare gear, including a couple things that say security consultant on them. And that means you will be hired at Hogwarts to finally get that place under control. I mentioned a hat. We're calling it the Muggle Cap in the store. We have drinkware. We even have a pickle pack shirt.
This stuff has never existed before, which is a big moment of excitement for me. And also, Andrew, what are you wearing right now?
I'm glad you asked. I'm wearing a We Criticize Because We Care t-shirt. And this shirt and other designs have our iconic Mike Bolt design on them as well. This shirt, you know, it's a common refrain on the show. We criticize because we care.
It's true.
We've gotten feedback over the years. Why are you guys complaining about this or that? We're criticizing because we want to see the fandom thrive. We want to see the story thrive. We criticize because we care. So this shirt is not just for people in the Harry Potter fandom. It's for people in all fandoms because it's a common issue everywhere. We do ship worldwide. And like I said, we plan to roll out new products in the months ahead. So stay tuned. How about y'all? What are you most looking forward to wearing?
I definitely got a security consultant or security nightmare shirt, and that's on order, as well as some of the glassware. We have glassware. Very excited.
How fancy we are.
Very sophisticated.
It says Potions Master on it, which I love. So
old fashioned would look nice.
Mix me up a cocktail, and Micah, you have to come to Chicago and bring yours, and then we'll mix them up.
We have a MuggleCast mug as well, and there's a strong emphasis on mug in MuggleCast, as you'll see in the design. Slug Club patrons right now have access to a special discount code, so please check that out, Slug Club patrons. They are the first to receive access to the store. So yeah, once again, MuggleCastMerch.com. For the first time ever, we have an official merch store. This is a new opportunity to support us, and we know people have been asking for MuggleCast merch outside of Patreon, so it's a win-win. Check it all out. Thanks, everybody. And now it's time for Chapter by Chapter, and this week we're discussing Order of the Phoenix, Chapter 4, Number 12, Grimmauld Place. I love saying those numbers back to back. And Eric, we got a time turner segment this week, right?
We do. Yes, we last discussed this chapter on episodes 229 called Sunglasses Not Recommended. Okay, and also episode 436. This one makes sense. It's called All Caps. In all caps.
Good one.
And that was so 229 was on May 27th, 2011. And 436 was September 23rd, 2019, over 5 years ago. I got to say, for this week's audio clip of the Time Turner segment, it's rated PG-13. I just want to put that out there.
Boy.
Luke, Forrest, cover your ears. I'm sorry. But Micah's been bringing it with the innuendo. And this week I decided to let him.
Oh, dear.
3 turns should do it, I think. Good luck.
What the... Episode 229.
We learn that Bill Weasley's home from Egypt. He's taken a desk job at Gringotts in London. And we also find out that old Fleur Delacour is working at Gringotts and getting private English lessons from Beale.
Private English lessons. Locked in a room all by themselves.
Yes.
I can see where true love is going to spark now.
Bill is
she was probably having some fun with those canutes.
Episode 436.
A couple pages later, Harry describes the house as, quote, as though it belonged to the darkest of wizards, which I found interesting because 2 books ago, that was Sirius to Harry. He was the darkest of wizards.
Oh, man. I love that.
Yeah.
That's
Not
a really
anymore,
nice
but...
kind of connecting the threads moment. I love that.
Yay, I did one.
Go, Andrew.
Mysterious thing, time.
Andrew's just the setup man. He set me up for that joke if you listen back to 229.
You had to take it.
And what I love about it is it's a blink and you'll miss it moment, you know? I love it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I love reflecting on this chapter because reading it back at this point, so much about what is going to go down in this book is in retrospect incredibly obvious because we have a lot of setup happening here. First and foremost, the foreshadowing about Sirius's eventual unaliving is really blunt. And I'm wondering if any of us picked up on any of this the first time. So we have Grimmauld Place, which really just sounds like it's intended to be like grim old place, which I think is a great descriptor for Sirius's childhood home. There's, of course, the connection to Sirius's animagus form being mistaken for the Grim, which is the omen of death 2 years prior. And when they enter the home, Harry and the advance guard, it's noted that it was as though they had just entered the house of a dying person because they're speaking in hushed tones. Mrs. Weasley also warns Harry to keep quiet so as to not wake anything up, which I think just lends a sense of foreboding of what the heck they're walking into here.
Yeah.
And Andrew, you had something else you wanted to call out.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to mention, because we see it used across the series, here is another example of the number 12 being used. And this is probably one of the most prominent uses of number 12 in the series. But yeah, I don't remember personally reading this the first time and thinking there's bad news ahead for one of the characters. But at this point in the series, we're 5 books in, somebody either gets unalived or disappears by the end of the book. So maybe I should have been more cautious when reading this and thinking, well, somebody's going to be disappearing. Maybe it's going to be a black with all this foreshadowing that's going on around here.
I just remember feeling a sense of dread this whole book, but because it starts off in Harry's in such a bad place, and now this new place is not, exciting in like a happy way. It's like
the burrow.
What great terror awaits us around this corner or in this drawer is something that everyone's asking, and it's like it's depressing.
Speaking of depressing, Harry is still feeling really isolated in this moment, even though he's having a couple of reunions here. Mrs. Weasley pretty quickly shoos him off to the room that he's going to be staying in, which is where Ron and Hermione are hanging out right now. And she does this in the service of getting him out of the way so that she and the other adults can go to an order meeting that the kids are not allowed to go to. And I thought this would be a really good opportunity for us to reestablish the conversation we've had over the years of, is the Horcrux acting up here? Because initially, Harry feels a warm glow flare inside of him at the sight of his 2 best friends.
Aww.
But he suddenly feels it extinguished as something icy, as something icy flooded the pit of his stomach. All of a sudden, after yearning to see them for a solid month, he felt he would rather Ron and Hermione left him alone. So I thought it would be interesting for us to watch for the actual descriptors, the adjectives that are at play when these moments happen, when Harry is really agitated or we see him described as starting to get ticked off really quickly, because I think there might be some clues here that we can use to justify whether or not we think this is Horcrux influence or it's just Harry. And to me, when I read this description of something icy flooding the pit of his stomach, it feels like the Horcrux to me.
Yeah. Yeah, you expect to hear a sound cue that's like,
right.
Don't get too happy. I'm still hunting you.
Oh.
Yeah. Moments like these can definitely be attributed to the Horcrux, but I also think that it's important to note that the Horcrux needs to feed off of certain emotions. Harry is behaving much how we would expect a 15-year-old who's been isolated all summer from his friends to behave, but there's this extra edge to him in this chapter. And really, we haven't seen Harry like this before. We haven't seen these emotions bubble up to the surface, but this is that initial moment. Like you said, Laura, there's this warm glow initially to see the people that he has been longing to see for so long and spend some time with. But then it's almost like he catches himself and he puts himself in check and says, hold on, these are also the people who haven't been talking to me all summer long. So I'm going to let loose.
Yeah, like, wait a minute, I'm mad at these people.
Yeah. Well, and also it is exciting to see Ron and Hermione, but they're in this very depressing area. Like, oh, this is cool, but where are we right now? I mean, he still doesn't even know this is a Black family home.
No, he's desperate to be so mad at them. And when he finds out that they've been miserable too, or in the same awful place, the fact that he really can't be mad at them and shouldn't be mad at them to begin with, like, it doesn't stop him from blowing up because he just needs to get this out. And, you know, to Micah's point about it, you know, Harry behaving in a way in which you'd sort of expect. Harry and Ron did expect this. Or Hermione and Ron did expect this. They expected him to be angry. Hermione says as much, at least twice. Like, we knew that if you were left alone and given no info, and, you know, Harry says things that aren't quite fair. And the problem is, I think it's pretty clear, the person he should be mad at exclusively is Dumbledore. But Dumbledore is untouchable. You can't be mad at Dumbledore because Dumbledore ain't around. He's not taking any calls. Nobody talked to him. He's away. So in the meantime, his friends get shouted at, and it's not great.
I like this question from Ariane Beth, who's listening live on our Patreon right now. Could Harry's Horcrux also be reacting to proximity to the locket, which is there until Sirius dies and Mundungus ransacks the place? So that's a good theory, right?
Yeah, I mean, Harry, I think, would certainly be more susceptible to being sensitive to it. We'll have to pay attention to what happens when we actually see the locket, because we are going to see it.
It's funny. From what I recall, nothing happens. They don't feel a sense of dread or anything. They're actually curious more than ever, because when they find it during cleaning, every single one of them gets a chance to try and open it, and they can't open it. So they're all kind of exposing themselves, getting really, really close to the locket. And it's just a locket. Like, it's fun that it's mentioned, but none of them seem to come down with anything. But what I was just thinking of was, what if the locket has really expanded on that sense of dread, because it's been in this house for many years now at this point. So what if it's sort of taken over, as we know that it's contained in the locket, but this particular Horcrux has a way of emanating out and making everyone around it miserable. So what if at this point it's like it's confined in the whole house and not just...
That's interesting.
Like, I wonder if, and then that would explain why everything is so grim, on top of the fact that there are just grim circumstances in the world.
Don't we attribute the locket to why Creature behaves much of the way that he does as well.
Mm-hmm.
Either
Because he's in possession of it.
Yeah, either the locket or the potion, but he definitely keeps the locket real close.
One
Yeah.
question I did want to ask, though, about this iciness that he gets in his stomach. Couldn't that just be anxiety? Couldn't it be nerves building up as he's
for
about to
sure.
explode?
Yeah, because now he knows he's excited to see Ron and Hermione, but now he knows he needs to have a talking with them because he's got feelings that he needs to get out. So yeah, that could explain it.
Yeah, and maybe some fear too, because I'm sure there's got to be not only anxiety, driving the response that he has here, but he probably is a little bit afraid of yelling at his friends deep down.
I would be too.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Yeah.
They deserve it, but that's tough.
Do they? No, they don't. No, they don't.
Well, let's actually talk about some specific examples of Harry's caps lock rant and talk about whether we think they're mostly being driven by Harry himself or are they being driven by the Horcrux. And I'm actually wondering if I can get some dramatic readings out of y'all. So has anyone had like a hard day? Does anyone feel like shouting?
I think Micah said he had a hard day. Let's have Micah do it. Come on, get the rage out, Micah. This is like axe throwing,
Well,
but on a podcast.
I'll start with a little bit of self-doubt and calmness. Maybe he thinks I can't be trusted.
This is about Dumbledore.
Mm-hmm.
Harry or Horcrux, y'all.
Harry.
That one's Harry.
Yeah.
Just because that level of insecurity, he says it in a way that it's like it would be unfair and ridiculous for Dumbledore to think that, but it's real raw insecurity. That's what Harry's best explanation is for why Dumbledore is not being forthcoming with him.
Yeah. All right, Micah, you ready?
I'm ready. Let's go. You've still been here, haven't you? You've still been together.
Oh my God, that was scary as hell.
Yeah.
I don't like that, Laura. This was a bad idea.
I think I triggered Andrew.
I feel like I just saw the Beast in Beauty and the Beast when he's like raging.
Stay out of the West Wing.
Yeah. Oh,
no, that
incredible.
was great, Micah.
Harry, right?
Yeah.
That
I
one,
think so.
Yeah, he's holding it against them that Hermione, like, yeah, it's just unfair, but it's all Harry, I think.
All right. Anyone else want to shout?
I'll do this one. I've handled more than you two've ever managed, and Dumbledore knows it.
Damn, Harry. That's so rude.
Yeah, it's a little much. I'm
What
going
are
to
we
say
thinking?
Horcrux, Harry.
Okay.
Agree.
How come?
It's just out of character to say I've done more than you two have. So why am
Well,
I in the dark?
And he says things like, who got the stone? Who went to the chamber? It's like,
Yeah.
dude, you didn't do that in a vacuum, okay? These two were with you. Ron literally laid down himself to get you as far as the stone. It's completely uncalled for. And it's giving Voldemort when he says, like, I who have traveled further and studied more and done more than the others to evade death. I've gone farther than any other wizard. It's literally like
He's bragging.
Yeah, I've handled more than you two. Like,
And he invokes Dumbledore.
well, this isn't a job interview. He doesn't need to be like prove to them that he's qualified. They're his best friends and he's their best friend. Like, that's why I think it's Horcrux.
Yeah. This is petty. Harry's not really a petty person. Not really. So I
Well, and
agree.
to Micah's point too, the mention of Dumbledore, like if anything is going to bring the Horcrux and Harry out, it's the name Dumbledore. Keeping totally separate from the fact that Harry has like a great reason to be upset with Dumbledore. That's a name that you would think the Horcrux in Harry, if it were listening, would be like, hate that guy. So, and then go crazy.
We have one more all caps moment here. He says, I suppose you've been having a real laugh, haven't you? All holed up here together.
That was very good.
It was great.
My
Great
general
performances.
feeling about the all caps moments is they are all Horcrux Harry, because even though Harry has reason to be angry with his friends, the all caps raging, Micah style yelling just feels out of character for Harry, for his best friends. Like, it just seems so inappropriate. Can you imagine yelling at your own best friends friends of 5-6 years in this way.
Then again, he's not being given a channel to process the trauma that he still has from just seeing Cedric die a month ago. And so this is very like these outbursts that are not characteristic are in fact textbook, PTSD or post-trauma like reactions, because he's not actually confronting his emotion.
Yeah.
This one was a little bit more difficult for me because even though you could blame it on the Horcrux, there's also this moment of deep insecurity that comes across in what he's saying here. The fact that he thinks that Ron and Hermione have been off in Grimmauld Place, having some laughs at his expense. They're together. He's not. He's the odd man out. He's being left out of the situation. That speaks very much to his own insecurity of the entire situation that he's been put into this summer.
Doesn't the Horcrux amplify that feeling, though? I think we see that with Ron in 2 books time, right? Where his moments of insecurity are really heightened and amplified when he's wearing the Horcrux. So Harry's got one in his head. Like, I think it makes it worse for sure.
So setting angry Harry aside, I actually think this chapter might make him feel better, and not because of the raging, but we'll talk about that in a moment. We'll be right back. So I have a bit of a theory I want to run by y'all. I'm wondering if Harry starts to feel better about being left in the dark after what he learns in this chapter, because he doesn't learn a lot of great information. And it's not like Ron and Hermione have been having it easy either. So here are some examples. First of all, Ron and Hermione have been left in the dark when it comes to the order meetings. They have to be cautious moving around this mystery house that they're in because of Mrs. Black's portrait. Snape is popping in. Ew, gross. Dumbledore has been a very busy man. He hasn't been vacationing. He hasn't been hanging out with everybody. Fred and George have been popping in to bedrooms unannounced to show off their apparitions licenses, which just sounds really annoying. They're all cramped in this dark and depressing house. Molly's stressed. I just think the Dursleys' house was abusive and bad, and Harry was left in the dark. But after seeing what's been going on at 12 Grimmauld Place, hasn't been that much better over here either.
Does Harry feel better because of this? No, because like he literally did not imagine that Ron and Hermione would also be having a bad summer, because how could you have a bad summer when you're together? But it turns out Dumbledore has found a way to not tell people things even when they're together. So,
yeah. And also, I got to call out here, I don't think there's any evidence here to confirm that Dumbledore has not been vacationing. Like, yeah, they say he's been busy, but I don't know. I need to see receipts. I need to see what the man's been up to. I don't believe it.
Well, okay, maybe.
Let's see his Amex from JJ's and make sure that he's popping back some margaritas.
He's been busy delegating from the beach.
That may be true, but we know he wasn't at 12 Grimmauld Place, so it's not like everybody's been hanging out with Dumbledore without Harry.
Yeah. I really do like how you put this all together, though, Andrew, and it just shows that there are varying degrees of isolation. Harry is in one situation in Grimmauld Place, and despite the fact that Ron and Hermione are together, they're still very much not in the know of what's going on. But I do think if you were to ask Harry, he would have still preferred to be there because he would be with his friends. He would be within the wizarding community, which I think that's the hardest part for him. It's not that he's necessarily isolated from his friends. It's that he's isolated from this whole other world of which he is now a part of. And that's the hard part for him.
I agree with you. I put this together because while I was reading the chapter, I was like, oh, this isn't that great. Snape, dirty old house. Oh, Ron and Hermione have to do a lot of cleaning. I think I skipped over that one. That's not fun.
Yeah. Harry's like, I know how to clean.
Yeah,
Why don't
yeah.
you
Let me
have-
clean. I mean,
Yeah.
cleaning can be fun, but cleaning this house, I don't know. I don't want to deep clean this house.
I know it's got all this magic stuff in it. It could be kind of cool.
See, I feel like cleaning would be a lot more fun if we could use magic to clean.
Yeah, yeah.
And I know that that's how the kids are going to feel here in the next couple of chapters. But yeah, I agree with you. And I think adding to the mix here that Ron and Hermione really want to tell Harry what's going on and they can't. So they're having to deal with the frustration and the isolation of their environment, all while being told, no, you can't tell your best friend what's going on, even though really scary stuff is happening to him. So I think Harry does feel a little bad towards the end. We definitely see him start calming down, especially when conversation turns to Percy, which we'll talk about here in the next few minutes. But before we get to that, I wanted to ask if we agree with Mrs. Weasley not letting the kids attend the meetings. Again, the whole reason this caps lock Harry moment is able to play out is because Mrs. Weasley very quickly sends him into a room where he can be alone with Ron and Hermione while she and the other adults attend to order business. I think it's interesting that even Fred and George, who are of age, can't attend.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, this is the kind of situation, though, where I think Molly probably suspects, and we believe that if any one of them hears what's going on in the meeting, they're going to spill the beans to the rest of the kids.
Especially Fred and George. They cannot be trusted. They can't.
But there is a question about would they tell anyone outside this group? And that I don't think so. Like,
No.
I can't see Fred and George even telling their good friend Lee Jordan about what they heard in the meetings, if they were allowed in the meetings, because Lee's not in the order. And so, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about Molly's decision.
Yeah. I think another way to think about this is, what if Harry had been allowed to know more, maybe not everything, but more about what the order was protecting and specifically where they were protecting it? Would the outcome of this story have been different?
Oh, 100%. Like, Harry doesn't yet know that he's been dreaming about the Ministry of Magic. And it'll be something that's interesting to look up in the next chapter, when we sort of learn more about what guard duty is or who's doing what, because I think with enough information, Harry would volunteer that he's been seeing things and they would have started occlumency a lot sooner. And yeah, totally different book.
Just to go back to the Fred and George point and the fact that they are of age, one thing that came to mind for me with Molly is that she already has 2 sons and a husband who are in the order. She lost 2 brothers in the First War. Maybe she wants to limit the risk here a little bit. She does have 7 kids in total, and including them all in order business seems extremely risky. And we know what a protective mother she is of her children, also of Harry. But I do think it seems a bit silly to not let Harry in a little bit more. And the main reason there just being, like, look at the first 4 years of these 3 at Hogwarts. You don't give them information, what ends up happening?
Trouble.
They find their way into trouble anyway.
Mischief. Yeah. Well, yes, I agree 100%.
I think that's a really good point, Micah, looking at her other family members. I think that Molly is very stressed, and Harry is noting this in this chapter. I think he says she's looking thinner or more frail. And I would not be surprised if she doesn't want to push that stress onto the kids by them all learning this information. That said, I do also agree. I like this idea. I think, Eric, you said Seamus, if Fred and George learn everything, they're not going to go and tell Seamus. There's like an unspoken trust that everybody, what happens in this house stays in this house.
Pretty much.
I don't even think you would have to tell the kids that. I think there's an understanding that what's going on here, what's being discussed here is very serious. We have this place on lockdown, and this stuff can't get out. I
Well-
would trust the kids.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. And, I actually, getting back to the question about whether Molly's just trying to protect her kids, I think that tracks. I also was reviewing the sacking of Severus Snape from Deathly Hallows, and it's literally the point where all of her children want to fight in the Battle of Hogwarts, and her only hope is to keep Ginny out of it because Ginny's still the youngest. And it doesn't work, sort of, but Molly wants always to protect as many of her children as possible. And even if that means shielding them from the truth, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, she's also, to her credit, probably thinking about what could happen if somehow her children were outed as being order members, right? I mean, that puts targets on their back. So she is thinking about keeping them safe. Unfortunately, I think keeping them completely in the dark ends up shooting the whole operation in the foot.
Yeah, but ultimately it's not Molly's decision. Dumbledore was probably just like, no effing kids. Like, and then they all have to follow his orders. There's no way he's going to sit in the same meeting as these children. He's not going to do it.
That's a fun point too. Yeah, he still doesn't want to be meeting with Fred and George. Screw that.
Yeah. What the hell?
Mean, is he even coming to these meetings? I don't see him there tonight.
No. He's popping in and out real quick.
He came in through the back door.
No, he's literally the guy who sets the meeting, but then doesn't show up for it.
Well, yeah, right. Yeah. Well, and Snape doesn't want to be working with Fred and George. Like, come on.
Yeah, like
he's out of the order.
Can you see that happening? Yeah, no.
Yeah.
There are still leagues of difference between what some of these, adult wizards are getting up to versus what these children could reasonably contribute. All of that to say that separately, Harry needs to be let in immediately on everything, but they don't know if they can trust him because if Voldemort's listening. But the fact that is not described to Harry until after Mr. Weasley nearly dies is messed up.
Mm-hmm. I agree with y'all overall, but I will just remind everyone that Mundungus Fletcher is in the Order of the Phoenix. So I can't see how any of these kids could be worse than him.
But he's an adult.
Yeah, who dips out at two very crucial moments that we see in the series.
In this chapter,
yes.
Hermione says that Dumbledore was scary looking, but Dung is still alive. So honestly, bit of fluff there with Dumbledore. He didn't kill Mundungus. If he didn't spell that guy flat immediately for doing what he did and putting Harry at risk and putting their whole operation at risk, everyone in the Order knows that this whole book series revolves around Harry. Everyone knows that it's all because of him. And Mundungus did something so reckless that should absolutely have made him not be able to still be in the Order. But the Order's desperate. Look at their choice in venue as well. Something I was thinking while reading this. They have nowhere else to be. Like, you would think people who have Dumbledore's magical talent could come up with, literally fabricate a headquarters that is shiny, new, spacious, everything. But no, they're in this old dilapidated house. There really is not a plethora of places they can go. The Order is actually in a sad sort of way, trying to raise awareness for something that the government is completely antithetical to.
Yeah. Well, Eric, I'm glad that you brought up Dumbledore's anger about the Dementor attack, because a lot of story beats that we're left with at the end of Goblet of Fire are picked up here, including that Hermione saying Dumbledore looked scary. And we can remember at the very end of Goblet, Dumbledore really trying to convince Fudge that allying ourselves with Dementors is a terrible idea. And we can tell Dumbledore's obviously ticked off about this because it's kind of an I told you so moment. What did you think was going to happen? We also, get to hear about the Daily Prophet picking up where Rita left off. To Hermione's satisfaction, Rita is not writing anymore right now, but the Daily Prophet has definitely taken to undermining Harry at every turn and really trying to set expectations that Harry is not to be believed, so that when he says things like Voldemort is back, people think he's just crazy.
It's really insidious and kind of, unfortunately, a really valuable tactic for the Ministry to deploy. Their campaign to smear Harry. And, I also get upset with Harry that he doesn't have good media literacy. This whole time he could have been clued in on some of these finer points of what the Ministry was trying to do. I don't think it would have made him less angry. But unfortunately, there's this scene between him and Hermione, and she's like, haven't you been getting the Prophet? And he's like, yeah. And she's like, well, have you been reading it? He's like, first page. She's like, oh, Harry.
Because I'm the chosen one, so of course I would be covered
I
on
would be
page
on the front
one.
page.
I would be on A1 above the fold.
That's
That
very
is-
Horcruxy of him.
It does seem like an oversight to not read through the entire paper. I feel like he would read the entire paper simply because he's bored.
He
at
wants
the
to feel
Dursleys.
connected. Yeah.
Yeah, go further back into the paper, play the Daily Prophet's Wordle or crossword puzzle. Like, he's only looking at the front page or the front couple of pages.
Well, he says that's because he assumed that if there was anything reported about Voldemort's return, it would be front page news. It's almost like he forgot everything that Dumbledore said at the end of Goblet. It's almost like he forgot Fudge's reaction to everything. And he was leading under the assumption that eventually the truth would come out and surely it would be front page news. But unfortunately, Fudge is, he's really, really, what's the word I'm thinking of? Sorry.
Strategic.
He's leaning heavily on the Daily Prophet to influence the way that they're reporting on their stories.
Well, and I agree with that, but I just still think Harry's so bored at the Dursleys. He's got nothing else to do. Like, don't you want to know what's happening in the wizarding world outside of Voldemort's return? Like, maybe that would make you happier if you saw some good news in the Prophet about.
It's very on brand for Harry, though. Let's be honest. Like, in a few
not a
chapters, Dolores Umbridge is going to give this tyrannical, autocratic speech at the opening feast of term, and Harry's gonna zone out because he gets bored and he's gonna need Hermione to explain to him what the heck it was Dolores Umbridge just said. So.
And then he passes off her summary as his own opinion and gets caught on it by McGonagall, I think, which is fun. Yeah.
Even if
that.
Harry had read the Daily Prophet, though, to me he seems like more of a skimmer. And if he's only looking at the headlines, he's not going to pick up on the nuance that Hermione brings up to him in this chapter. These were just very casual passing references that were included in articles that likely Harry is not going to be sitting there and reading every single article. So unless it's bold and in the headlines, I don't think it's capturing his attention.
But then think about what it says about Hermione's love for Harry, that she is reading every article. And her ability to comprehend what she's reading and see what the Ministry is doing. The fact that, like, the reason that Hermione is so clued in when Umbridge speaks at the start of term is because she's been seeing the stage get set for exactly this sort of thing. She's apt. Like, aren't we so glad we have Hermione as our great ally? Everyone but Harry can agree that Hermione's great, always, and is always on his side, clearly.
For sure. Before we get back to the dialogue that Harry, Ron, and Hermione have, I did just want to note this moment of great misdirection that comes up when Ron and Hermione are really trying to give Harry any context that they can give him. They talk about the extendable ears that Fred and George have invented that have allowed them to overhear some things. And Ron mentions that they've heard them talk about something to do with guard duty. And Harry shoots back at him, oh, do you think they might have been talking about me?
I am the chosen one. They must be talking about me.
And Ron's like, oh yeah, that's probably it. I love this because, yes, they could have they probably absolutely were talking about Harry, but we know the real thing that they're talking about, and it's the prophecy at the ministry.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I love
really,
that.
really fun moment. Well, now Fred and George join the party. They hear Harry shouting and they apparate into the room. And I think this is so interesting because in the last book, Percy was doing the exact same thing after he passed his apparition exam. And George says, Percy only passed 2 weeks ago. He's been apparating downstairs every morning since just to prove he can. So I think it's really funny that Fred and George are passing this judgment on Percy a book ago. And now they're here doing the exact same thing. It really reminded me of how we said that this feels like the wizarding equivalent to getting your driver's license.
Yeah. There's a certain freedom that comes with being able to apparate. That said, this is a huge invasion of people's privacy. I would be so annoyed if somebody did this to me.
I mean, I bet Fred and George are just trying to make sure no one was murdered. Harry's
Yeah, I mean,
so much.
that could be like, that could be a fun joke once, and then after that, I would get super tired of it.
No, but it's very much, I'm going to the store. You want anything? You just went 5 minutes ago. Yeah, I know. I'm going again. You want anything?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Hogwarts was onto something when they set up that no apparating in and out of Hogwarts rule. I mean, that's smart.
People would pass time like, crazy.
Yeah, we all thought it was a security measure, but it was really to stop the students from being obnoxious with apparition.
That school is not a privacy nightmare.
With Fred and George, though, the way that it comes across is that they do it in a comical sort of way. To me, with Percy, I would assume he did it with a level of arrogance. And maybe
Percy does everything with the level of arrogance, right?
Well, that's why it's not the same.
I mean, Percy couldn't have been doing it for a more functional reason. He needed breakfast, so he would apparate down and grab the toast and apparate back up.
Yeah. I mean, I also, I think Fred and George are actually good brothers. And I think in this moment, they're doing this to diffuse the situation. I mean, they literally say, oh, Harry, we thought those were your dulcet tones that we heard. Like, I think that they're trying to ease the tension in the room.
Yeah.
But they're doing it in a very Fred and George way.
And he's their sugar daddy. They want to make sure that he's okay.
He's checking in on you.
He's
Yeah.
bankrolling them.
Oh, man.
He's a long-term investor.
Maybe that's what it is. They're like, we got to check up on Harry. Got to check up on our man.
Our sugar daddy.
Harry.
Make
That's
sure
the
he's
episode
okay.
title.
Harry the sugar daddy.
How did it take
New
us
t-shirt.
670 episodes to get there?
Well, speaking of Percy, so we're just chatting about how obnoxious he was last book with his apparition. Believe it or not, he gets even worse here because Percy, Harry learns, has gone no contact with his family, as the kids would say. And he's had some really hurtful things to say to Arthur in the process in particular. He says things like he's had to struggle with Arthur's lousy reputation working at the ministry, and that Arthur has no ambition, and says to his father, to his face, that is why the Weasley family has always struggled economically. That hurts to read, especially thinking about someone saying that to Arthur.
For me, this illustrates how, we've often seen Ron struggle with being poor, but I think it has affected every member of the Weasley family. And this is something that wouldn't have come out of Percy's mouth ever if it weren't for the special circumstances, I think, and the strain that the circumstances in the world are putting them under. But, Percy had this news of getting a promotion. He wanted to be congratulated. And instead it was met with this suspicion, rightly so, I think, that it wasn't earned. And there's not a safe way you can tell someone that their promotion that they're excited about was not earned. And did Arthur probably bungle it? Maybe. But Percy is not the kind who can hear that sort of thing in the same sentence instead of congratulations and then take it to heart. So this is just very unfortunate that these things were said, but yeah.
I can see
he's too proud.
Yeah, I can understand the pain from both sides, because like you were saying, Eric, he wants to be congratulated. He is proud of this position. He doesn't want to be belittled, and he doesn't want his family to pull the rug out from under his excitement. And I also think maybe the Weasleys could have treaded a little more carefully here. They know he wanted a job like this. They know he wanted to work his way up in the ministry. Is it worth bringing this up right now? Why not just privately set up your own walls?
It's a paranoia, though. It's a product of the time in which they're living, and they're recognizing the fact that Percy didn't have the best year last year in working for Barty Crouch Sr.
No.
So why in the world would he be promoted to work with the Minister for Magic? The idea that perhaps Fudge is trying to draw him into his inner circle so that he can have a direct line to the Weasley family actually makes a lot of sense. But I would have preferred it if in the end we learned that Dumbledore went to Percy and had said, Percy, look, take this job, and I need you to almost be at odds with your family over it so that you play your role as well as you possibly can. I think it would have done a lot more for Percy's character. You know, he does finally come back to the family in Deathly Hallows, but Percy is just so blind because of his own ambition in this moment that he can't see what's going on around him. And it reminds me of the line that we'll hear later on in this book, that the world isn't divided into good people and Death Eaters. Like, the battle lines are starting to be drawn, right? Even within families. Maybe that's a strong term to use, but it's clear that as things progress, it's not just good side, bad side. Like, there's people who are going to kind of fill in this middle ground area in these next couple books.
Yeah, and Percy's the kind of person who genuinely believes that if you work hard, you'll have great things happen for you. And because he's worked hard from his perspective, he thinks that he's earned this. But he's also internalized every bit of shame that the ministry has ever thrown towards, Muggle lovers and all this other stuff. Like, he's inherited all these other prejudices that most ordinary people have that the Weasleys don't. And it's made him turn on his own family like this. It's coming from a place of deep isolation, and Fred and George have done their part Percy's whole life to make him feel like, the odd one out in the family. So this was a long time coming, but it is very unfortunate.
Yeah. I wanted to ask y'all if you thought that we had ever seen any other examples of Percy resenting or being embarrassed by his family's lack of money. I think what stood out to me rereading this is exactly what you just said, Eric. I think Percy's isolation amongst his siblings is very clear. His resentment about the family's economic status, I feel like this is the first time that's ever been addressed. We hear Ron be embarrassed about it all the time, but I can't recall an instance with Percy.
I mean, it might just be that Harry's Ron's friend and they're the same age. So like the stuff Percy would have been going through would have happened at the same age, but 2 years earlier before Harry was in the picture. So, you're not going to hear Percy complain about hand-me-downs because by year 5, he's used to it, or something like that.
Well, Percy doesn't get as many hand-me-downs, I suspect, right? I think Ron, as the youngest boy in the family, probably gets the most.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of people in Harry Potter and their complicated families, I think we can all agree that Percy really sucks here. Like, overall, I understand him being like too proud and embarrassed to accept what his father is saying to him, but he ain't stupid. He should be able to piece that together. Can we think of any characters other than Percy who maybe should have cut their families off in Harry Potter? There are some rough families in this series.
Harry Potter himself should have cut off his Dursley family.
Yeah, Dumbledore wouldn't let him because he's got to be welcomed back on Privet Drive. I said Merope, but we know she tried.
She did.
Draco.
Yeah.
Percy reminds me of Draco in how they kind of do a complete 180 by the end of the book.
Yeah.
Like, it's once they're in too deep and they recognize just how bad things are, that's when it clicks for them.
Yeah. And it wouldn't, like, nothing short of that could have, I think, turned them around. Yeah. It's interesting. I also don't think that what Percy said to Arthur was fair necessarily about not having any ambition. I think that, knowing the way the ministry is and the fudge is going around, it's said in this chapter, telling anyone that if they sympathize with Dumbledore, they can be fired. Knowing that that's the way they play it, I actually respect Arthur for getting a position in the ministry where he has enough autonomy that he can skate by. If he were closer to Fudge in terms of the overall structure, he might have to start being more outspoken against Dumbledore, and that just wouldn't serve him.
The no ambition comment is just so mean to say to your father, too. First of all, Arthur is happy in this role. Second of all, he raised you under his roof. He was able to make it work. Third of all, they had how many kids? 8? How many Weasley kids are there?
7?
Of course, 7.
Bill, Charlie, Percy,
I mean,
Fred,
that takes
George,
some
Ron,
ambition right
Ginny.
there. Like,
But yeah, I think it can also be extended to his choice in field, because the reason that he's not able to climb the ladder as easily at the ministry is because his chosen field is something that the ministry is largely not supportive of. And that is the wizarding government passing judgment on what things merit funding and exploratory research, right? And that's what Percy is saying here. Effectively, what Percy is saying is, well, Fudge doesn't think that, Muggle artifacts are important, so why should you? Pick something that our society values more than what you're doing. And that is what Percy thinks is a lack of ambition. It's rough. Yeah. But yeah, I think Merope is a good example of like someone who tried, but
yeah, her family was they were just completely toxic for her, and she knew it. She imagined better for herself. So Arian Beth made a comment in the Discord listening live and said the other side of, quote, if you work hard, you'll have good things happen to you, is the often unsaid, quote, if your life doesn't meet your expectations, it must be somehow your fault, which is not logical or true at all, but I think is what Percy's putting on Arthur. So that's interesting. Yeah. It's like literally this idea of merit and that you actually earn your station in life. And time and again, I think in real life, we see that be tested of like, actually, no, that doesn't necessarily work out.
Yeah.
Well, shifting to another Weasley sibling, Ginny. I was really pleasantly surprised to read this and be reminded of this moment. I really feel like we get to see Ginny's personality shine here in ways that we haven't gotten to see before. So she is currently flicking dumb bombs at the door downstairs behind which the order meeting is happening. She's trying to test if the door has been imperturbed. Tonks taught her how to do this, which like really adds to the cool vibe here. And the funny part of this is that when Molly comes to get them for dinner, she asks, why were all these dung bombs outside the door? And Ginny just lies straight to Molly's face and said that Crookshanks was playing with them. It literally says Ginny lied unblushingly. Like she had that justification ready because she knows her mom.
Yeah.
Well, this raises so many questions to me. One, why doesn't Ginny just pick up the dung bombs after herself? 2, why don't they go off? You throw a dung bomb at a door. I understand it bounces off, but it doesn't like lay on a pillow. It hits the floor. Why doesn't it explode? Does it have to be ignited? Well, how do dung bombs work? I don't know.
In terms of dung bomb pieces being on the floor, that house is pretty darn messy. So I actually am surprised Molly's even batting an eye at it, unless Ron and Hermione had cleaned it up previously and suddenly they're there again. But you could have blamed this on Creature too.
Well, that's kind of what Molly does. She says, "Oh, I thought it might have been Creature. He keeps leaving weird things laying around."
It's the perfect cover.
It reminds me
There's
of
a lot of people in that house. Could be a lot of
the gift that Creature gives Harry. What is it, like a maggot-ridden something? It's like, oh, what if he thinks that's actually a nice gift?
Well, kind of on a related note, Eric, Ron notes that Creature is a nutter whose life's ambition is to have his head mounted on the wall like his mother.
Funny Ron is back, everybody. I thoroughly enjoy Ron in this chapter. I really do.
Hermione in this moment does what Hermione does best and says, "Hey, you got to be nice to him. It's not his fault that he's a little odd. Can you quite blame him?" And the reality is we don't even know the half of it yet. I mean, we're going to find out next book what makes Creature as weird and demented as he is. But I also want to see if we can get a foreshadowing alert every time someone is dismissive of or disgusted towards Creature, because I really feel like these moments stack on each other and ultimately lead to Creature's betrayal of Sirius. So Hermione says, "And it's not just me. Dumbledore says we should be kind to Creature too." And Dumbledore gives this acknowledgement to Harry at the end of the book when Harry's raging about how Creature did what he did. Dumbledore's like, Creature acted that way because of how he's been treated his entire life, in large part by Sirius. So we have this nice bookend here at the beginning and the end, really showing that Creature is a product of the society and the environment that he's lived in. And I just want to ask, why does no one listen to Hermione when she has these nuggets of wisdom early? There's this, we're going to get the Eileen Prince connection in the next book, and Harry's going to be like, the Half-Blood Prince couldn't be a woman.
Well, I
Prince,
think
Hermione, Prince, Purple Rain, Prince, not a woman. Pretty sure that's a direct quote, right?
I think in talking about Hal's Elves previously, maybe in our Goblet of Fire discussions, Ron, and to, I guess, some extent, Harry, and definitely other characters in the Wizarding world, they're trying to unlearn everything they know about Hal's Elves. Hermione's trying to make them unlearn these things, and I think it's very difficult for them to do that. I mean, they grew up, Ron did, thinking that Hal's Elves are housekeepers, and they work for us, and that's that. That's just the way it is, kid.
Well, presumably Creature was the only living thing inside of this house when the order showed up. So Dumbledore is probably thinking, let's treat him with a little bit of respect here, because who knows what kind of information he could have.
Yeah.
Why couldn't they have had their meetings at the Room of Requirement at Hogwarts?
They don't want to be at Hogwarts more than they already have to. Not the adults, anyway. Yeah. I think Creature could just potentially cause more havoc in the house, so they don't want to rock that boat too much.
Yeah, for sure. Well, speaking of havoc in the house, we also do get to see Snape briefly as he's leaving this meeting. Ron notes that Snape never eats dinner with them, thank God. But he's definitely showing up to these meetings with some really valuable intel. We can even tell that the members of the order can't quite contain themselves, but to keep murmuring amongst themselves in the hall as they're filtering out, where they see Snape's greasy head as they're, peering down from the top of the stairs. But I'm wondering if we had any thoughts when we were first reading this about what Snape was doing here, because I think that's a question that's playing on all the kids' minds. Like, why is he here? Why are we trusting him to be in this, organization that's trying to fight Voldemort?
I hated it. I didn't have any theories, but it was just so uncomfortable seeing Snape in this place. being basically in cahoots with the trio, which is something we haven't seen. It just made me feel uncomfortable. And in these close quarters,
I never hate Snape more than when he baits Sirius throughout the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I give him the benefit of the doubt. But except for that, that's not good.
Laura, did you have any guesses when you were reading?
I think at this point, I really believed that Snape was on the right side of history. And it kind of felt to me like a red herring.
Yeah.
But then, when we get into the next book, we can talk about how, like, when I got to the end of that one, I was like, oh, shoot, was I wrong? Well, our girl Tonks is a little bit clumsy. And this chapter wraps with Tonks knocking over the very heavy troll leg umbrella holder, which is really weird to imagine every time I see it described.
I think it's in the movie too, isn't it?
Is it? I don't remember.
No?
Well, the prop may be in the movie, but this scene isn't. And I was going to bring up, it's such a huge miss to not have included this. Now, somewhere, maybe I'm misremembering, did they initially look to include Mrs. Black in the films, but maybe we just watched the movie. I should remember if they actually just have the curtains in front, but they never obviously open up, which would have been a very fun moment.
Yeah.
Surprise.
Yeah.
I don't remember if we even saw the curtains.
No, I don't feel like they touched on any of her portrait at all or even alluded to it. But it is a huge miss because this is a great scene. Tonks knocks this troll leg over, creates quite a din, and this is when Harry learns why it is that everybody has to be so quiet in the entry hall. These curtains fly open, and this portrait of this woman screaming just foul things at all the people in her home. Her eyes are rolling. She's drooling. And all of a sudden, Sirius Black comes out of the kitchen and yanks the curtain shut, telling her to shut up, turns to Harry and says, "Hello, Harry. I see you've met my mother." And I remember laughing out loud at this line when I read it, because she's also, she's shouting horrible things at Sirius as he's coming to get her to shut up. I mean, like, shame of my flesh and filth and all this other nasty stuff.
Yeah, it's so good. It's such a great ending.
Yeah.
I did do a quick search, and it does look like there's a shot of Creature walking in front of a closed portrait. Okay. And we do hear him muttering in the films, talking to Mrs. Black, but we never get, obviously, that official introduction. But I did also want to call out, Laura, you mentioned this severed troll's leg stand. It is important to kind of get a sense of what kind of house we're in. The fact that they do have this type of piece of furniture within their home, and then it's mentioned all of the former house elf heads are like mounted on the wall. We're not in the nicest of places here.
Again,
that's gross.
Again, do you think that if they had any choice of venue, they would be here? Like, choose to be here? No. Like, this is, unfortunately, for whatever reason, this is the only place they got.
And that foot did make an appearance in the movies. I don't know if this picture I shared in our Discord is from the set tour, but they did create it for the movie. And it's foul. And, like, doesn't that smell? And who wants to look at that nasty, those nasty toenails? Like, bleh.
They're like Voldemort toenails, except bigger.
They are. Yeah, they are. That's wild.
No, it is kind of giving the same vibe as hunters having stuffed versions of exotic animals around their house and animal heads mounted to walls.
Yeah.
Like,
it shows their perspective on the larger wizarding world.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think we need a Max Mrs. Black.
Yeah, we need
for
that.
the TV show.
I would be okay if they didn't. Max Mrs. Black. If a whole series comes and goes and we don't get it, because what point does it serve? It's just another grim thing going on in this grim old place.
Sirius could say, I see you've met my mother.
I see you've met my mother, yeah.
And then it ends on like sitcom laughter.
Yeah, we need a
commercial break.
We need a Max series, How I Met Sirius's Mother, and told backwards from this point forward.
See, I don't know if we need that.
I think we do.
No, I think it'll be important to include because it really sets up Sirius's character in this story and why isolation drives him to do what he does.
Yeah.
Isolation is such a huge theme in this book.
Yeah.
Well, we did also turn to our Slug Club patrons over on patreon.com/mugglecast for our links line this week. This is our newest benefit on Patreon, where we are asking our Slug Club level patrons a question specifically tailored to that week's episode. So this week we asked, name a person in Harry Potter or in real life or in other fiction, living or dead, who you wish you had as a living portrait in your home. Ideally, it'll be someone much nicer than Sirius's mom. And we asked people to please let us know why they would want that portrait installed in their home. So I figured in host order, we could just read through these.
Rachel said, of Harry Potter characters, I'd have to say Sirius or Luna. Historical figures, probably Moses or Joan of Arc. People from my own life, my grandmother, or the counselor I had in college. Oh.
Aww.
Eric, Stephanie's.
Do you want to get Stephanie's, Eric?
Yeah, sorry. And Stephanie says, I love the idea of having a really good chef or baker on the wall, like Nadia from the Great British Bake Off. Put her in your kitchen and never have to Google substitutions or ingredients or how to make a puff pastry. I think this is a great hack. Like, yeah. I want Gordon Ramsay on my, well, maybe not him.
It's like an Alexa.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds really stressful, Eric. Gordon Ramsay.
I just want him to curse at me all the time.
Do you want him to be like British cooking show Gordon Ramsay or American cooking show Gordon Ramsay?
Oh, straight up Hell's Kitchen.
Oh gosh,
like,
okay.
Yeah, or Kitchen Nightmares.
Because he's different depending on
that's fascinating.
Which audience he's performing to.
I don't know how to feel about that, actually. No, I'm ready for him to, because, you know, the meme-ified Gordon Ramsay stuff where he like says really funny stuff. Like, this squid is so undercooked, it's still telling SpongeBob off. Like, you know, sorry for this swear. I want that on a portrait.
Jennifer says, this is a tough one. I'd love to have a portrait of Pink, because she can sing, dance, and also give some great advice.
Oh, that's cool. A good hack,
I love
too.
that.
Yeah.
I love the idea of having like a pop icon in your home. Just like, Pink, can I have some advice? Paxton says, I would want one of Fred Weasley. In addition to always being around to make me and others laugh, I feel like he would do his best to keep an eye on the house and protect everyone. Also, his death is one of the ones that broke my heart the most. And by having his portrait, he can live on in a way.
Jeff said, I would choose my great aunt Harriet, who passed away in 2018 at the age of 97. She was 67 years older than me, but I was closer to her than anybody else in my family. We shared a love of books, including Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings. Nice answer, Jeff.
That's so lovely.
Yeah, I love that. Brienne says, Harry Potter related, Minerva McGonagall. I love how real she is about everything. Plus, she's super knowledgeable, and I feel like she could give a great pep talk if needed. For fun, Dave Matthews. The man can sing, play the guitar, and say the most off-the-wall things that will certainly make you laugh. In-home concerts? Yes, please. Dave's commentary on the craziness of today's world? Yes, please.
I can actually do that for you, Brienne. Here we go. Here's my Dave Matthews impression. There you go.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Andrew, would you have Bruce?
I would have you three because I want you three in my lives more.
Infinite Muggle casts. Oh, I love that.
You don't edit us enough.
Are you sure you wouldn't like put curtains in front of all of us just to like make us shut up sometimes.
Well, and I think that's one part of this question that would have been fun too for listeners. Like, and you do have a curtain, so like, if you want Gordon Ramsay in your house, that's nice, but you can shut him off, so no worries. He won't get too. If he gets too annoying, you can shut him up.
Leah says, Luna, I feel like she always has something interesting to say. She'd have a unique commentary to break up mundane day-to-day tasks. Remember her Quidditch commentary? Imagine that playing while doing chores. She would add humor and interest to everything.
Agreed. Actually, I feel like if I had to pick a Harry Potter character, I would pick Luna as well. I'm still thinking about who I would want as a real life person.
I would pick
Amy-
Dumbledore. And
Yeah.
oh, sorry to interrupt, but I would pick Dumbledore, and then during a reread, I would look up and I'd go, "Are you serious with this?" And he'd have to defend himself.
You would confront him with the receipts.
Be
like, "Sir, where were you,
sir?" Yeah.
Amy said, personally, I'd love to have my mom on hand for her great wisdom and compassion. But seriously, since you said we can choose people who are alive, how cool would it be to have our 4 favorite hosts on hand for conversation and laughs?
Good answer, Amy. 3 months of
that's
Patreon
so
to you.
Sweet. You already let us into your house.
That's
like
a good
once
point.
a week with new episodes. So this is quite an honor.
Zachary said, I would love to have a portrait of George Carlin. His commentary on life today would be unimaginable. I would also love a portrait of my pop. To this day, he's been all of his grandkids' #1 fan and continues to help me with daily advice on life and fatherhood and parenting in general.
That's
good
awesome.
answer.
Julianne says, I'll take a scrolling portrait like a digital picture frame with all my book boyfriends, please. We can start with Charlie Weasley. But if we can expand to all fantasy books, I'd like to add Xaden Riorson, Kingfisher, and Cassian. Okay.
Yep. I think the book boyfriends is a good call. I agree on some of those.
That's interesting.
Greta has a very wholesome one. She says, Molly Weasley, she'd be the closest equivalent to Alexa when it comes to home-related questions and spells, and she could give you advice on your choice of outfit for the day or tell you what to bring to a dinner party. Love that.
Carly said, Leslie Jordan. He was an absolute icon, an amazing human being. I would love to hear his commentary on a daily basis.
Noelle says, Phineas Nigella's black for sure. He's got portraits in plenty of places and I want to spy on. And he'd probably yell at me if I got distracted while working. Having portraits of my own family up on the other hand, ... I can relate to poor Sirius and not appreciating that. Oh, wow. But yeah, somebody who can hassle you whenever you begin to like meander and not do your work would be wild. That's a wild accountability buddy.
Yeah. Sarah says, in real life, I'd want my dad or grandma's portrait. A useful portrait would be a doctor or nurse to help give you advice. Ooh. And then in the wizarding world, I'd also like a healer or maybe someone like McGonagall or Dumbledore for life advice.
I feel like having a doctor as a portrait in my house, it would be like WebMD on steroids. Like my health paranoia would reach all new levels. I'd constantly be going to the doctor portrait and being like, I don't know, like my pinky feels weird. What do you think it means? It'd be terrible.
You have 3 days to live.
Yeah. Oh my God. Still, I think we've cracked free healthcare on this episode.
If they can operate on you and prescribe medication and all that.
Okay, I guess not. Well, then,
It's the V1. It's the V1.
It's the V1. Maybe a therapist. Maybe my therapist. I'll get a portrait made of my therapist.
Catherine says, I mean, I wouldn't mind a portrait of Henry Cavill up for perpetuity.
Hey now.
And good taste, Catherine.
Hannah said, wow, where to start? Do you want knowledge, entertainment, or a memory? Right now, I would have to say one of my favorite musical artists, Josh Groban, so he can sing, and I would never need a radio or Spotify playlist again.
Jen says, I would love to have my Nana's portrait in my house. I was very close to her growing up. She passed a number of years ago, and I would love to get to hear her voice and see her smile again. She also passed before I had my kids, so I'd love her to meet them. Albeit in portrait form. I agree with that. That's really sweet.
That's a really beautiful sentiment. And to really bring us home here, Barry says, honestly, none. I have enough smart home devices watching me. I don't need a portrait that can share its opinions on my life choices. Oh, man. Imagine if Google and Alexa could talk independently. All right. And replacing our old MVP of the week segment, we also are customizing these pick a character of the week segments to something specific to the chapter. And I think we can all agree that Percy Weasley is the worst Weasley. But I want to give y'all a challenge and basically make this easy for myself. So I'm asking y'all, who's the worst Weasley, except I already picked Percy, so you have to pick someone else.
Great. Okay.
I'm going to give it to the Weasley twins. I'm putting them together because spying is wrong.
Oh my God, you hypocrite. Okay. You know what? Mine is not better. I'm going to give mine to Arthur for not doing more to get the family some money. Clearly, they resent you for it. Gosh.
I'm going with Molly, triple down here. Stop the Molly coddling of these kids. Harry is 15 years old. He was bar mitzvahed 2 years ago. He's a grown man in the eyes of the wizarding community. Enough is enough. He's faced more than you ever hoped to.
And Molly's like, my brothers were killed in the last war.
Aww.
Oh.
Listeners, if you have any feedback about today's discussion, you can contact us by emailing or sending a voice memo that's recorded on your phone to mugglecast@gmail.com. And we have a bit of news. Our traditional phone number is now being retired. In part
Did you not pay the bill? Did we forget?
We may have forgotten to renew it, and Google said, you know what? We're not giving it to you, and you can't have it back. But you know what? It's for the best because the phone calls are not very good quality. We still have access to all the voicemails, by the way. So if you have called in, we have had them. We do listen to them. But the voice, let's enter 2024 fully. Voice memos only. Peace and love.
You know what it is too? It's really obnoxious to keep the line going. In theory, it sounds like it's easy, right? You just have to remember to make a call from it or send a text message. But who's paying attention to that? Clearly not me.
Yeah, clearly not you. That's why we lost it. And honestly, it was just fun to say like 19203 Muggle. Like it's cool Muggle was in the phone number.
It will live on.
Yeah. Pour one out.
Yes. You know, we've long said that voice memos are preferred. Emailed to mugglecast@gmail.com. And that's been the case. The quality is much better. So think of it as a real attempt at quality improvement.
Yeah.
So I wonder what's going to happen, though, because some people still have this number saved. So when this number goes to someone else, are they going to get random phone calls from people talking about Harry Potter?
I hope so.
Yeah, I'm going to become that person's best friend.
I'm going to call right now. It just immediately. Oh, it says user busy when you try to call it right now.
Who's tying up our line?
Yeah, immediate. Dude. Google's just like put it on lockdown. It's going to go to some phone number graveyard. Well, anyway, next week we will discuss Order of the Phoenix Chapter 5, Order of the Phoenix, this book's namesake. And now it's time for everybody's favorite trivia show. Google will never take this away from us. Quiz Edge.
Last week's question. What well-kept lawn in London has been home to a zebra, an elephant, and a helicopter landing pad? The correct answer was the lawn at Buckingham Palace. Of course, fun factoids about that. And 55% of people said they didn't look up the correct answer that they got correct. And the winners are as follows. Buckbeak waiting for Harry to come upstairs and say hi. Oh, okay. Hi to my Ravenclaw husband. Horton hears a helicopter. I would tell you, but Dumbledore made me swear not to. Kelsey, Merlin's missing buttock, the sniffler that got loose in Buckingham Palace, and Yoshi. And congrats to everyone that submitted. And here is, I'm particularly proud of this next one. Next week's question. In honor of the portrait of Walburga Black, what famous artist and sculptor was given an exclusive license in 2014 to use a material known as Blackest Black? Walburga would be very happy with this person. And please submit your answer to us on the Quizich form located on the MuggleCast website, mugglecast.com/Quizich. And also, you're able to find it if you're on the MuggleCast website, checking out transcripts or anything else, by clicking Quizich from the main nav.
This show is brought to you by Muggles like you, dear listener. We are as independent as Percy is isolated from the rest of his family in this chapter. So your financial support is of the utmost importance. In fact, listener support is the only reason we've been able to podcast for 19 years and counting. And we now have 3 great ways to help us out. If you're an Apple Podcast user, subscribe to MuggleCast Gold, which gets you instant access to ad-free and early releases of MuggleCast, plus 2 bonus MuggleCast installments every month. For even more benefits, visit patreon.com/MuggleCast. You'll get all the benefits of MuggleCast Gold, plus live streams, yearly stickers, Links Line participation, a physical gift, a video message from one of the 4 of us made just for you, access to our private Facebook and Discord groups, and more. And then number 3, visit MuggleCastMerch.com for all of our brand new merchandise. Laura, earlier in the recording, we had a request. Legalize Gillyweed wondered if we should start selling your pants. And for anybody who doesn't know, who's probably really alarmed right now,
Oh my God.
there was a running joke about your pants way back in the day.
Yeah, and I don't think that you've said anything to assuage people's concerns.
Well, to make it sound less random.
No. The TLDR, y'all, the story is I left a pair of my pants in our hotel room in Los Angeles when we were there for the 2006 Podcast Awards. Eric very kindly carried them home and mailed them back to me. And during a much earlier episode of MuggleCast, in the middle of the recording, Eric just goes, "Laura, did you get your pants?"
You know, sometimes these thoughts come to me and they're fleeting, and I got to check.
You got to check it off the list. Yeah, otherwise,
You got to do it.
Yeah.
Micah, thank you for understanding.
Yes.
We will also start selling a MuggleCast notepad where people can put their thoughts down and then share these thoughts when the time is right.
Oh, I get it. Y'all are gonna go in on a Christmas gift for me, and it's gonna be that notepad to hold my
Thoughts. Yeah.
Thoughts.
Yeah.
Now,
okay.
Laura, I mean, we can sell pants. I'm looking at the options right now. We got some,
Let's
we
just
have
say
choices.
Yeah.
Laura's on them.
But
Laura's pants, I think it's all
Like
the way.
custom made Laura's
pants. Yeah.
Laura's pants.
I mean, listen, I'm all about the marketing push. But I will say, if I recall correctly, the particular pants in question were gaucho pants. They were very popular at the time, and not to say that they're an unfortunate fashion choice in general. I'll just say they were an unfortunate fashion choice for me. So I don't know if I recommend us doing like an exact replica pant.
Of course.
Is there something more stylish?
Do you still have them?
No.
Some joggers, maybe.
Yeah.
Joggers, leggings.
Honestly, joggers, leggings, or sweats, like those are all me
Perfect.
vibes. Comfy
Okay.
pants.
And we'll put Laura's pants down the side, and then we'll put a picture of your face on the backside.
Oh no, don't do that.
Okay, never mind.
I don't
But
want
I think it'd be awesome if it said Laura's pants down the side,
Yeah,
Yeah.
down the side.
and then
Absolutely.
the mic bolt on the other side.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I'll be very surprised if anyone buys a pair, but let's see. Like, let's just see what happens.
You see the people in the Discord? They're buying it.
Legalized
Buying a pair.
Gillyweed is at least one customer for you right there.
Wow, I really appreciate the support.
We'll get working
Listen.
on this, y'all.
yeah.
Stay
Yeah,
tuned.
we're on it.
This is
We're
very
on it.
exciting. All right, so those are the 3 ways to help us out. Buying Laura's pants is priority number 1. If you enjoyed the show and think other Muggles would too, tell a friend about the show and leave a 5-star review in your favorite podcast app. We couldn't do this without you all, so thank you so much for your support and your listenership. That does it for this week's episode of the show. Thanks, everybody, for listening. I'm Andrew.
I'm Mary.
I'm Micah.
And I'm Laura.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.